We may live over 5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in the film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane Page. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL, and I'm joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Jonny, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. I managed to trigger our guest within, about 3 seconds of joining the podcast today. So for those of you watching at home, you may see the little Arsenal badge other side. I decided to wake up and choose violence before recording this podcast. I'm actually interested. You know, this is true. At Arsenal's Emirates Stadium, there is an Arsenal Philadelphia banner that's been there for about 3 years. And it turns out there is a giant Arsenal Philadelphia fan club. So it's very strange. When I was at the Emirates this year, I was just looking opposite me. The Emirates is the Arsenal Stadium, by the way, to all you Americans who have no idea what I'm on about. Being the English football team in North London, where I live. And I looked out and there was a giant Arsenal Philadelphia with the Liberty Bell. So after some Googling, it turns out there is a fan group and it's actually States-based. But yeah, I managed to trigger our guest because he is a Chelsea fan. So I managed to annoy him within 3 seconds of recording. So we did try and get Fran Duffy on the line, but turns out we've got a stick, sadly, with the Chelsea fan today. I'll let you introduce the guest, Shane, before I abuse him any further.
Jonny bashing our guests before we even introduce them. We're also joined today by who I think is a special guest. Jonny apparently differs, but it is Josh Davis. Give him a follow on Twitter at the PHL Special. You can check him out on YouTube. He does a lot of great work on YouTube at the Philly Special Show. Josh, how are you doing this evening?
I am doing pretty good, Shane. I appreciate the intro. Jonny, not so much, but, you know, hey, to each their own. Everyone's got a fan of something else. So despite the fact that I'm a Chelsea fan, and that's what triggered me, because, again, you know, see the red hop on, I'm like, oh, wait a second, that looks like it. And yep, see the badge there. So, but I am excited to be on here with you guys. Appreciate the invite, especially, I mean, you know, it's the off season, talking about different stuff. So it's always fun to talk birds, especially when there isn't as much going on, because, you know, we got to talk about something. But long-time watcher, very excited to be here. So I appreciate it.
Well, we're happy to have you on. And Jonny, before we dive in, I do have to give you a weather update because we let off last time with you complaining that it was like 85 degrees or something in England. And
oh boy.
Our heat finally broke here after like 32 days with no rain whatsoever. On July 4th, we had like a big poolside cookout thing at my in-laws that we were in the middle of it, and all of a sudden we got 70-mile-an-hour winds and torrential downpour. We got, after 32 days of no rain at all, we got 6 inches of rain in like 5 hours. And so that was a lot of fun, and now we've got no rain again, and it's really hot. But we had that one moment on the 4th of July when it rained, and we also thought our roofs might blow off. So that's how weather is in Oklahoma. Josh down in Texas can probably also sympathize with our heat. But Jonny, how's your weather? Have you cooled off a little bit?
Yeah, it's a disaster. I shouldn't have complained. I think I cursed the weather gods because ever since I moaned about it being too hot, it's just dropped dramatically. And it's basically just rained all weekend. I was standing outside today getting drenched. And it is meant to be our summer, but it's not really our summer at all. It is very cold for an English summer. I can't do the older, we use centigrade, what do you use Fahrenheit? It's currently about, once my Google loads, about 64 Fahrenheit, which doesn't feel like a summer. It is not particularly warm right now. So I'm not going to complain ever again about the heat because that was a bad idea because it's basically just, the summer hasn't existed so far. So fingers crossed we'll get it back. But yeah, the British weather is not doing too well. In fact, you may even hear some of it because it's starting to jack it down and it sometimes bounces off our roof. I don't think it will be caught in the mic. Fingers crossed. But if you do hear it, it'll be a little ambience to just how bad it is right now over in sunny England.
All right. Well, without any further ado, let's dive in. We talked about there's not a lot to talk about at this point in the offseason, so we're going to dig into some Chargers film today. Obviously, the Eagles go and they get Kellen Moore, who was the offensive coordinator for the Chargers, to come in, so that's why the Chargers. But I went through and picked a long scoring drive from last season. So this is going to be a drive, I think it was week 8 against the Bears. It's their opening drive of the game. Spoiler alert, it's going to be a 10-play, 92-yard touchdown drive, and we're run through all 10 plays. I've got the all 22. Those of you listening on audio platforms, I tweeted these clips earlier, so you can go follow along there. This might be an episode that's a little better to watch on YouTube. Please continue to download. We love your downloads. They help us out a lot. But you can also head over to YouTube or to Twitter, and you can find the actual plays. We'll try to talk about it in a way that you guys can follow along without them if you're driving or whatever. But we just wanted to dig in and see the anatomy of a Kellen Moore drive. And so, Jonny, this was your idea. I was going to throw it to you, and then I explained it anyways. What did I miss here? Is that anything you want to add in before we get started?
Yeah, you just missed the blatant copyright thing that we need to give a massive shout out to Coach Dan Casey. I'm pretty sure his name on Twitter is @CoachDanCasey. I'm now frantically double checking that as well. He's probably the best offensive X's and O's guys to follow on Twitter. It is literally @CoachDanCasey. He seems to have just gone absolutely mental the last year with how much good stuff he puts online. He's also released a book, which we might dive into later on, about sort of offensive stuff. And he's basically got a series on YouTube that we are blatantly stealing, where he's just gone through. I mean, to be fair, it is just looking at a drive, so you can't really steal it too much. But it was his idea. I watched his videos on Ben Johnson and on Shane Steichen, and he basically just spoke about how, as fans these days, we look a lot about like highlights. Even myself, I mean, I've watched a lot of Kellen Moore, but I will often skip through games to things that I want to see or things that I'm looking for. And just literally slowing down and watching a drive from start to finish, where you get to see like a number of different plays called. You start to see a little bit of sequencing. We're not really trying to judge him. It's not a case of good or bad. We're not really going to comment. I mean, there'll be things we like, maybe things we don't like. This drive has some quite interesting plays, which we'll get to, and we didn't pick it by any particular reason. We trying to sort of to give the viewers, I guess, an idea of sort of what as you said, a standard Kellen Moore drive would look like. That's sort of the basic premise of it. So hopefully by the end of it, you'll sort of have a better understanding of how Kellen Moore may call plays next year, which I guess is the purpose of it.
All right. So without any further ado, let's dive in. On the screen, I have the down and distance because you don't get that in all 22. I also have what personnel it's in. So the first play, we get the Chargers on their own. What is that? The 7-8 yard line. It's 1st and 10. They come out in 12 personnel, and I'll roll the tape here, and then we can skip back. But they start with 2 tight ends attached to the left, and they shift them to the right. And then I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on this one, because I don't know. I tried to ask Jonny, and he wouldn't talk to me about the plays, but the snap just looks off. I'm not sure if this was supposed to be like an RPO, because obviously Herbert tries to throw the slant route at the bottom of the screen. And so they've got a slant route coming on the bottom of the screen, and Herbert tries to make this throw, but he does like a weird thing with the ball where he kind of ducks down after the snap. I don't know if he just didn't get the snap cleanly, or if that's supposed to be like part of like a run fake and he's getting out of the run play and making the throw. I'm not really sure, but regardless, the center just gets blown up and there's nowhere to go, and Herbert ends up sliding down for like a 1 yard gain. But Jonny, what were your thoughts on this? Is this an RPO, do you think? Is it just a mishandled snap? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, for a little bit of context, I didn't not talk to you due to my laziness. Me and Shane always don't like to discuss things before. Otherwise, we end up just saying the same thing. So I deliberately said I'm not going to tell you anything. Yeah, my guess was it was an RPO. Just briefly looking at the offensive line, it looked like they were run blocking. It's hard to tell sometimes from this. I think the thing that stood out to me straight away is the double shift of the tight ends as well, pre-snap. And we're going to talk about that a lot on this drive. And there's also a little bit of emotion from the receiver at the top end of the screen as well, to come in and act as like an extra blocker. And you see this a lot in like the McVay tree. They bring in their outside receiver to help block on like inside zone and duo. I think it might be an RPO because he definitely looks like he tries to throw it, but I think the timing's just all screwed up on the snap. So it's a bit of a rubbish play to break down in some sense. But it's an interesting start of the drive, I guess. Josh, anything you wanted to add there in particular on this one?
No, I mean, I think you guys covered it pretty well there. I was just looking at the reaction really from all the guys. Definitely a busted play of sorts. But no, I think hit the nail on the head as far as just, anytime Herbert's taking the carry for a yard or two, didn't go as planned. But, yeah, it looked like an RPO there.
Yeah, I definitely like your chances of Jalen Hurts getting you a better outcome on a busted play like that than I do Justin Herbert. So I really like Herbert, but that's maybe not what you're looking for out of him. So that brings us to their second play. It's 2nd and 9. They stay in 12 personnel. And this time you're showing single high coverage pre-snap, and you've got off coverage at the bottom of the screen, which is where he's going to end up going here. But we're going to get motion again, a wide receiver coming across the formation, and they just sort of run like a route up the seam with 2 sit routes. And I know that's something that Chargers fans and Dallas fans have talked about in the past, is Kellen Moore's like propensity to just run curls. And there's definitely some of that in this play, but at the end of the day, you're getting single high and you're trying to stretch that seam, and you've got off coverage. And so I don't know if there's some sort of option built into this play, but those are those types of underneath throws that I think Herbert's really good at executing. Josh, anything that sticks out to you on the second down play here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and we'll talk about it, I guess, through the entirety of the drive. But I think for me, you mentioned there, it's like, yeah, it's not a flashy or sexy play, sometimes with the curls and whatnot, but it's taking what the defense gives you. And I think what stood out to me is the motion for one. Like, we know that Kellen Moore loves to use similar alignments or similar formations, usage of motion and things like that, but to play your kind of different disguises. But it's just kind of a quick option there. Is Herbert takes the snap, look at the read, make the throw. Just don't make it too difficult. And, again, I think we'll probably get into it a little bit later here in the drive, but we all saw that way too many times from the Eagles offense. So it's not one of those like, oh, hey, did you pick up a 20-yard gain? No. And are you pulling up for a third down here? Yes. But at the same time, it's like you still move it forward, keep moving down the field, and obviously with a 10-play, 92-yard drive. But I think it's just promising. Take what the defense gives you.
All right. Jonny, anything that you want to add in there on the 2nd and 9 play?
Yeah, nothing in particular. Just to start off, they're still in 12 personnel, but it's a very different look. So you see first play they come out, 2 tight ends, both like in line. Looks like it's going to be a run game, a run play on the center. Second play is more shotgun. You shift to like sort of the 3-by-1 set. It looks to me like a 2-sided read. So it looks like Herbert's got basically 2 options. It looks like a sort of double curl or stop, whatever you want to call it, on one side, which he chooses. I mean, it looks like he's got like a slant flat on the other side. So I think maybe that's something we'll see a little bit more of. Maybe Hurts, or in this case it was Herbert, having the freedom at the line of scrimmage to maybe pick a side. Half-field reads, much more common these days. You don't really see a lot of full-field reads around the league as much. So very common, very standard, quick game. Nothing too interesting. I guess just to point out the difference in the alignment that you mentioned, Josh, sort of pre-snap. Same personnel grouping. I'm assuming same players or same personnel. I wasn't actually looking exactly who was on the field. But my guess is it's the same. But within 2 plays, you've got an under-center play with 2 inline tight ends, and then you've got them spread out from the shotgun. So already you can see like a variety of different formations that may be used. And I think it's set up 3rd and 5. Am I right, Shane?
Yeah, it sets up a 3rd and 5, and there is a substitution here because they're now in 11 personnel. And Jonny, I'll let you take us through this one first. Let you get your thoughts here. So I'll click play and you talk to us about this one.
Yep. So as I look over, firstly they shift pre-snap, so they're 3-by-1, then they go to empty. And this is almost very, very similar. This is quick game. This is double slant. So when you're 3rd and 5, you've got 2 deep safeties. Basically, you're spread into empty. Get rid of the ball very, very quickly. The safety actually does a really good job driving on the football quickly, but essentially it's enough. And again, that's 2 plays in a row where they've been willing to go quick games. So for those of you that maybe think Hurts and the Eagles offense was a little bit over aggressive at times, maybe you'll be pleased to see a 3rd and 5 play where they basically just try and get the bare minimum. The only thing I would say about this play, watching it back a few times, is when you go empty and you run everything quick game, it looks really condensed. And if you actually pause it, Shane, when he makes the catch, like you could draw a ring around all of the players, and like it's a very small. So from a pure like play design point of view, I mean, they get the first down. There's nothing against this, but I would like to see as a play caller be a little bit more spread out. So it's almost like it's so quick game. Like you often hear analysts talk about spreading a defense horizontally and spreading a defense vertically. They're not doing that here. Again, it could be because, again, we've not watched this game in depth. They may have seen the Bears on film beforehand. They may know this is available. They get the first down. The quarterback is quite far off. But it's a pretty easy read, once again. I would say as good as someone like Justin Herbert is still pre-snap, I think you can see him almost picking a side before he even does anything. And I think it's very similar to the first play in that it's pick a side. They're both running double slants, triple slants to the right, and it's essentially take your pick. Also interesting that so far we haven't really seen any real motion. We've seen shifts. There's been a lot of shifts before the snap, but we haven't seen any actual movement sort of as Herbert is snapping the ball. This is very easy for a quarterback, this kind of read. But still, it does mean that Hurts maybe has to be a little bit sharper pre-snap because they're obviously going to give him the ability to maybe pick a side at the start. Yeah, anything else interesting there? Anything I've missed? Josh, I'll throw it to you before we go back to Shane.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I think you called it out there. It's the quick game to it, the efficiency, but at the same time, too. I mean, it'd be a breath of fresh air to just take what the defense gives you. So the fact that you are using that and then saying, all right, hey, here's a quick slant, pick up the first down, move the chains, 11 personnel. I mean, that would be very refreshing. But no, nothing else aside from Herbert being efficient and quick with that. And naturally, I think the idea would be that Jalen starts to pick that up as well.
Yeah, I think. First of all, you get that motion out to empty, and the linebacker follows the running back. So you're pretty clearly in a man look. We got Eagles X's and O's. We got Eric chiming in on YouTube, says that 6 should have stayed with inside leverage. And it's interesting because I think they're playing out cover 1. Like, I think it's less the safety makes like a great read to come down and more that it is cover 1, because you see everybody's got outside leverage on this play. But number 6 steps inside of the tight end and then bounces back out. And if he stayed inside, it would take that away. So I'm not sure if he was confused or what they were trying to do there. But one thing I will say is if you think about running something like this with the Eagles, first of all, I would like a better, like you said, don't have everybody run a slant, like run crash on one side, do something. Because if they did jump to inside leverage pre-snap, every route breaks inside. That'd be tremendously hard to get any sort of positive play. But also with Jalen Hurts, if you're going to empty out like that, you've also got a massive running threat. And so that's just something, too, that Jalen Hurts brings to the table that Justin Herbert doesn't. And so it makes going empty like that a little bit more dangerous, I think, although for a different reason. So regardless of how we get there, they do get the first down. They'll keep the drive alive. And Jonny, I've got to throw to you first on this one, because they're in 12 personnel. I'm calling this like 12X personnel because they have an extra offensive lineman. And so we've got an offensive lineman at fullback. Those of you that like tracking personnel groupings generally, not generally. The first number is your running backs. The second number is your tight ends. So 12 personnel would usually mean 1 running back, 2 tight ends, which means 2 wide receivers. But here there's only 1 because you've got an extra offensive lineman. I asked on Twitter, how are you supposed to chart that? And I didn't get anything definitive. So I'm just going to call it like 12X personnel for an extra lineman. So, Jonny, take it away. This is your bread and butter. Talk to me about the run game here.
Yeah, just like big picture, we've seen 4 plays and they're all, there's 2 quick game, but the formations they use are very different. This is just standard. We spoke about it all the time, a bit of outside zone. We spoke about this a lot, Shane, when we spoke about Kellen Moore at times before. The big difference here is the obvious one that you mentioned is they're using an offensive line as a fullback, so it's basically zone lead. It's a bit of an old school play, and just like philosophically, there are teams around the league that would never do this. So I think already you're seeing that Kellen Moore maybe is a little bit old school, although we've just seen the previous play him go to empty and spread out 5 wide and throw a double slant. Now this is like old school zone lead. And I also think it's a minor point, but look at Justin Herbert after the play. Shane, if you look at the way he runs this play out, he is very much faking for the boot action, which is the benefit of running the zone under center. You can see that he turns his body, and you can almost imagine them later on a future drive, or even in this drive, coming back to that look. Again, I'm not going to get into the X's O's of the actual players here or the result. I don't really care about how it actually looks. I'm just looking more from a big picture, the way they sort of the different formations, a different way they'll run the ball. It's also interesting because Chargers were not known for having a particularly strong run game at all before he turned up, or even last year. Really, they struggled at running back quite a lot. And the fact that he's still trying to get the running game going with an under center zone lead play with a 6 offensive lineman is just interesting to look at. Maybe he's not at all wedded to one system or one formation. You'd have to say so far we've only watched 4 plays and they're all dramatically different. Like this is very, I wrote in my notes old school. This feels very like throwback era NFL. So yeah, that for me personally, that's just exciting because it's something a little bit different. Josh, I can see you shaking your head when I said the old school there. It looks like a play you go back 10 years and you're seeing it all over the league. Maybe today not so much.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. But it gets me excited too because I'm seeing that. I'm going, okay, under center, you got the extra lineman. the alignment that you're taking advantage of. But to your point, like Kellen Moore's not afraid to do that. And so it's honestly whatever's the most effective. And you say, hey, you know what, we're going to run the football here. You get it set up on that side, but it's something that we haven't seen, obviously. And so I think that, Shane and I have recorded, like a year ago, and we were talking about, oh my gosh, there's one under center play for Jalen, over the course of like 3 games or something like that it was, and so it's like you see something to this effect. Granted, it's just one play of the drive, but you've already seen a couple different formations, couple different alignments, and not afraid to, throw a lineman in there extra whenever you're like, hey, let's go ahead and just run it.
Yeah, please give me, when the Eagles do this, please give me Mekhi Becton at left tackle and put Jordan Mailata at fullback. Like, all I ever wanted in my life was for Jordan Mailata to get a carry as a fullback. So just put him back there as a lead blocker a few times, and let's get him a goal line touchdown. I am here for those rugby skills translating. But, yeah, I mean, I literally in my notes, I just wrote run play, ask Jonny. So I didn't take many notes about that play. So let's keep moving here. They go to the 12X personnel. They pick up 5. That brings them to a 2nd and 5. They're going to be an 11 personnel. And Josh, I'll throw to you here first, and we'll roll the play and let you get your thoughts out there before I start talking this time.
Cool. Yeah. No, on this one here, I really like this look because you've got motion as you're going with the snap, and it's Keenan Allen there. And the thing that I thought of beforehand is, again, we talk about the lack of motion that the Eagles had in general. Last in the NFL, Kellen Moore and the Chargers were 8th. Keenan Allen actually had more motion percentage usage himself alone, more than the Eagles' entire team. So, it's like, all right, you're doing something different. But you see Keenan Allen going in motion here. Kellen Moore makes it very easy, like we say, for Justin Herbert. But again, it's a very quick option. He takes what the defense gives you. You see the defense is not shifting or not going along with Keenan Allen. So when you get 2 receivers on that side, it's kind of an automatic. You just clear out with the one receiver, throw it over to him at the sticks, quick first down, out of bounds. You're just going to, again, taking advantage of what the defense gives you, which seems like the constant theme for Kellen Moore. So hopefully see more of this. I mean, if Keenan Allen's getting that much percentage of motion, I believe Smitty was like 3 or 4% motion all year. So I keep thinking, like, if you get Devontae Smith or AJ Brown usage in motion like this, it makes life easier instead of having to throw, just one-on-one beaters and hope that they take advantage of that. But overall here, I think great concept. Get Keenan Allen in motion, take advantage of the mismatch.
Yeah, and I love where they snap Keenan Allen too, because if you freeze it like right at the snap, he's just crossing behind the other receiver. And if you're running any sort of a matching coverage, that really messes with defenses. Who is the outside receiver? Like, who's the number 1 receiver here? Because 2 guys can see that very differently. And it's not exactly like the speed motion that the Dolphins were running with like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, because it's not really trying to get upfield, but it's just confusing how defenses are going to label these guys, and it puts your defender into a conflict. Is he going to cover the seam or is he going to cover the flat? And really, whichever one he doesn't cover is going to end up open. And so 2nd and 5, I just love the simplicity of the play. You get the ball out fast and you move the chains. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but we talked about last year the Eagles' inability to stay on schedule and the big play hunting. And so I like seeing, Justin Herbert's got a great arm, but we can also just take these plays and get first downs. And so for me, that's what really sticks out to me there. Jonny, anything we missed that you want to add in?
No, not really, except for the fact they continue to change the look pre-snap, whether it's motion or shifting just before. You sort of beat me to it, Shane, because you said at the end. The thing I was going to say was I moaned earlier on about not stretching horizontally and vertically. That play was the exact opposite. That is the definition of putting stress on an outside corner. You've got one receiver running vertical, and then you've got the horizontal route coming underneath him. That is like the very definition of stretching an outside corner, both horizontally and vertically. But I think just big picture, we've seen 5 plays, and it's all been very quick. It's all been very quick game. It's all been very short. And again, this is just one drive, but I don't think, and I may be wrong, but I don't think there have been many Eagles drives where you've seen last year like very, very short throws consistently back to back. It's with like an under center running play thrown in there as well. But yeah, also just the main one is the idea of motion and shifting, just continuously to being a huge part of changing the picture pre-snap.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep rolling then. We're on to play 6 in the drive. This is a 1st and 10. It's out of 11 personnel. So, Jonny, talk to me about this one as we roll the tape here.
Yeah, just looking at my notes. First thing is it's a much more of a wider split, so they were condensed. Right, interesting thing straight away, which many people hopefully pick up, is that the motion looks identical to the previous play we've just seen. So whether that is the play doesn't necessarily work, it's more of a check down here. But if you pause it there, that is almost identical. Again, slightly different look, but whether that is, and again, we don't know, we can't get into his head, but whether that's an idea of maybe we're not going to run it again, but the defense is obviously going to be more wary of that particular motion. The defense does a pretty good job actually covering everything here. You could end up and say they end up in almost like a quads look here. So we're going to talk a lot about quads with Kellen Moore in general, of isolating a receiver one-on-one. This is the kind of play where if you look to the left, that motion essentially isolates the receiver down at the bottom, and they've also given him a condensed split so he can go either way. In reality, the play doesn't particularly work. There's a little bit of a play action here as well. They're trying to stretch the defense horizontally and vertically. Herbert doesn't really like what he gets, so it's just a simple check down. And sometimes we can talk all we want about coaches, but players make plays, and it's just a simple play action check down. I think what's interesting so far as well is that I haven't seen Eckler stay into block once. And we mentioned about the running back staying into block a lot, or I have under Kellen Moore, but I think that's when you bring pressure. And so far, the Bears are just bringing 4. So it seems like they're not going to use blockers sort of unnecessarily. They'll maybe use quite a lot of the time you see the running back check. So he sort of has a quick look. Are they bringing any pressure? I think he's looking here to see if someone extra comes. And the second he realizes there's only 4, he is able to get out into the passing game as well. Yeah, that's sort of it for that one. There's not a great deal except for the fact that is the motion immediately looking the same. From a spacing point of view, I don't particularly like the two routes at the top of the screen being so close together. It takes a little bit of time for them to separate, but you'd have to say overall they're still being stretched quite a lot here. The defense, you've got a very vertical route. That motion once again is stretching them very horizontally, and they don't get anything from the isolated route because they almost double him up. I think it's Keenan Allen at the bottom there. He doesn't really get any separation at all. Yeah, that's it for me really on that play, Shane.
Yeah, Josh, anything that you want to add in there?
No, I think that Jonny hit there as well, but just the bad spacing. Yeah, Eagles X's and O's mentioned it as well from number 2 and number 3 receiver on that play. But again, it's like, hey, players make plays. You ended up capitalizing on this in a sense, but also it's setting it up for future plays on this drive. So again, it's kind of similar presentation, but different looks from that or different results. So not the best in terms of execution, and the defense did cover it well, but still sets it up for the next play after that.
Yeah, Chicago kind of boxes that top trio of receivers, and it leaves the middle open for that check down. And you know, you can take that. You can throw a check down, and it's 1st and 10, and they get like 15 yards here and get another check down. And so the biggest things that stuck out to me was that exact same motion, snapping the receiver at the same spot that we did on the previous play. And Eric chimed in on YouTube and said that Moore loves to use stacks and quasi stacks with motion. Because it significantly limits the number of ways teams distribute coverages. 1st in, 1st out, safety capping any vertical route. You know, boxing coverages is kind of terminology I've used there as well. But we've seen that several times, and we're only 6 plays in, and it does put stress on a defense if you think about how you're going to defend that. And you know, we talked about the Eagles having a really simple offense last year. Here, they're making a defense play pretty simple, because it really limits what you can do. And so I really liked that on this particular back-to-back plays. So let's keep going here. Let me queue up the next play. We're again going to be on 1st down, 1st and 10. We're again going to be in 11 personnel. I wouldn't necessarily call that motion. Maybe you do, but this is definitely motion. So we get the tight end motioning from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen. So we're essentially going to end up in like a 2x2 set. And oh yeah, I should have let Jonny call this one out first, because this is a split zone play. So Jonny, you take the wheel here.
Right, I'm just getting my bearings as I'm looking over my notes now. So this is the split zone from shotgun, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so my notes are pretty simple, really. 2 late splits. Or shift, sorry, once again. You could call that motion, but I sort of depends how you determine it, I guess. I look at it more as a shift to look at something pre-snap. I think it's interesting that they've used a fullback, and now they've used like sort of a, whatever you want to call him, tight end H-back running. I think versatility is going to be a word we use a lot in Kellen Moore's offense next season. You want players that can do a variety of roles. The tight end actually does a reasonably good job here. There's nothing too fancy, but I think the fact that you've seen them run from shotgun on early downs, they run from under center on early downs, and they have thrown. So far, it has been pretty exclusively run from under center. We haven't seen any play action sort of yet from under center. But yeah, nothing too crazy here. Shane, I did want to mention this because I was going to mention it in my last play, just very, very quickly. There was a really good quote that I took a picture of that we spoke about before, is about, for viewers wondering just like, well, why doesn't everyone just run motion every play then if it's that easy? Because what Eagles Eric said is basically perfect. I mean, it's very, very simple. If you change your pre-snap look, the defense has to adjust to it very quickly. It's not rocket science. I think the important thing to note is it always does the same thing for quarterbacks as well. So it changes their look. And there was a quote from, I mentioned it before on the pod, but from Greg Cosell talking about what Peyton Manning told him. And he said, Peyton never wanted anyone to move. He wanted Marvin Harrison on the right, Reggie Wayne on the left. He knew where the defense was and he could figure it out pre-snap. And I think it's just worth noting that, as again, we're not really talking about things being good or bad here. I'm much more interested in the coach's philosophy. That for anyone just wondering, like, why doesn't everyone just use motion every play then? And that is sort of one of the reasons why. There will be a challenge to Hurts, having to get used to a lot of bodies moving around pre-snap, because it wasn't something that we did, as Josh mentioned earlier on about Devontae Smith's numbers are shockingly low. It wasn't something we did really at all. But yeah, nothing else really to mention on the split zone play, except for we've seen now zone runs. We've seen a bit of a gap. Sorry, we've seen mainly zone runs so far. Split zone, outside zone. Nothing else really to add here, Shane. Josh, anything extra you wanted to add? To be fair, it's a pretty simple play, though.
Yep, you got it. Nothing else for me.
Jonny, I got a question for you real quick. You're the run guru, but traditionally on a split zone play like this, doesn't the tight end kick out the opposite defensive end so your offensive tackle can get to the second level? So typically, at least the way I've seen it, you would get the double team here on the defensive tackle. Your offensive tackle is getting to the second level for this linebacker, and you would kick out. But that's not what they do. They actually have the tackle take the defensive end. They get the double team, and the tight end just like pulls through and tries to wrap the linebacker. That's a little abnormal, isn't that?
Yeah, the reason why though is, and you're right, it is a little bit abnormal. But the reason why I don't really read into things like that is, I mean, firstly, it depends on obviously the front you're playing against. They run a lot of weak zone runs here. It was the same here when they run to the weak side of a defense. But I think without me knowing the Chargers personnel very well, I always find it very difficult to analyze why other teams do things. Like, is there a reason why the tight end can't kick out? Is there a reason why they don't want the tight end to go against the defensive end of the Bears on that play? Like, yes, you are correct. And maybe it suggests that Kellen Moore will not just run like plays traditionally, and it will base it based on who he's playing against. But before I would comment on anything of like his use of split zone, I'd have to see it multiple times over a season before I could say it could have just been a unique thing for that game against the front they're facing, or someone screwed up, of course. And it shouldn't have actually been run like that at all. So yes, I sort of see your point, but without looking at like every split zone rep from the Chargers, I probably wouldn't have too much about in the specifics as to why they ran it like that.
Okay, fair enough. Any run game question I have is always coming your way. So Eric's chiming in again on YouTube saying it's a lot harder to defend runs like that against the Eagles because Hurts is, that makes you +1 in the running game because Hurts is the threat to keep that ball too. That Justin Herbert's simply not. And I mean, how many times last year did we see the Eagles pull Dallas Goedert across the formation like he's going to kick out block, and it was really that little RPO where Hurts could give it, he could sprint out into the flat and sort of use Goddard as the pitch man. And so absolutely right that, I'm excited to see what the Eagles can do with that. They were just so reliant on it last year. So let's get into the next play here. That gives us a 5-yard gain. It sets up a 2nd and 5. They are in 12 personnel here. And this play, I about fell out of my chair the first time I watched this play. So we're just going to run it here. We motion the tight end into the backfield. So it's kind of like an offset I formation at this point. And it's going to be a handoff that's a flea flicker that's then a tight end screen. And Josh, I just got to ask you, it's been said there's a fine line between genius and insanity. Is Kellen Moore flying too close to the sun here? Like, do we need a flea flicker into a tight end screen? Like, is that genius? Is that insane? I don't know what to make of this play.
Yeah, like I would be okay if the Eagles don't run this play, especially seeing it. I know hindsight's 2020 and everything else, but like the defense, they played it fairly well. I don't know if it was a like last minute, oh, he's getting it, and all of a sudden you had an option in case the safety came down. You could throw it over the top, but like, yeah, you have your tight end there. He kind of makes a man miss. You do pick up the first down. It could have very easily resulted in like no yardage at all. So that one for me, yes, to your point of the insanity, I'm like, I'm okay if we don't want to run those, because as I was even watching, I'm like, oh my gosh, this could go bad in so many different ways. I mean, if the running back fumbles a snap, the toss back, the defense is back there pretty quick as it is already. So, I mean, Justin Herbert's got to go with like a sidearm angle to even deliver that to the tight end in the first place. So, I mean, this one, cool. It's a cool play design. It's a fun one to watch. But honestly, I mean, without a player making a guy miss there, it's resulting in no yards at all. And it seems like a whole lot of risk for not a whole lot of gain.
I mean, when I watched this play the first time, my first thought was, whoa, that's really cool. And then my second thought is, that's really dumb. Maybe, question mark? I didn't even know. Jonny, what's your take on this play?
Yeah, well, this was the one when you told me about and you said just wait till halfway through the drive. I think the thing that surprises more than anything is that this feels completely unnecessary. Like they've been moving the ball really easily. Quick games worked fine. Running games actually getting going. So it feels like I guess, and it tells us something a little bit about Kellen Moore. And again, this is something we've said before, Shane. He's not willing. He's more willing to try a little bit of trickery than the Eagles have been of late. You will see a few more. I mean, whether this is a trick play or not, but you will see more plays like this. The flea flicker in general, I've never really understood. Like, I sort of feel like it's just the risk to reward benefit is so risky or whatever I'm trying to phrase it, when you could just basically run play action. And as long as you disguise the ball well enough, you can basically just run a play action screen. I think the interesting thing is, and I'm going to keep mentioning this, you'll notice personnel barely changes. It's 11 and 12, but their looks are different on basically every single snap. They don't look the same. Like, every single play looks different. This is now, if you go back to it, Shane, because remind me, I'm pretty sure this is where there's a shift right into almost like a fullback you mentioned. This is under center. Correct. This looks like, once again, like a heavy run play. You have a shift to like a H-back, fullback type. So you start out under center, then you shift him back into the backfield. And if you watch what 84 does at tight end, he's properly like blocking. Like if they run this play, that's a proper lead zone. So we've seen 2 plays on one drive with essentially like a lead blocker. But this time they don't actually run it. They fake the lead. It's not necessarily, I can't remember from anyone actually, is it outside zone or is it just a standard zone? But either way, I think they're basically running that sequencing of the play they did earlier on. So what was it, the 4th play of the drive? They ran under center zone lead, and now they're doing the exact same about 4 plays later, but they're throwing it. So I think you're seeing a little bit of sequencing here. You're seeing him coming back to a look he's used later on. But the personnel stays the same. Everything else looks different. Like every play looks very different. And again, I'm not saying that's good or bad, because there are some coaches that don't need to do that. The Eagles offense has been fantastic of late, or for the last few years, being relatively simple. It's not always good. But you can just tell that it's very multiple. Yeah, that is a play when I was, as you said, genius or not. I wouldn't run that on 2nd and 5 after like 6 good plays. Maybe I'd run it on like a 1st and 10 if I'm 14-0 down and there's 2 minutes left at the half. There we go. Yeah, as Eagles Nexus does. I didn't even see that comment from Eric, but there's a time and a place to run a play like that. That felt like one he looked at in the week. He liked the look of it and was like, I've got to run that play, even if it didn't really fit the drive at all. But I guess they got the first down. So,
and it's not like it's the 4th quarter and he's just had this one up his sleeve and has to get it off. This is the opening drive of the game, so he had plenty of time.
That's what makes it really unusual. The only thing we can say from just doing one drive is maybe there is a little bit of rationale when he comes back later on. I don't think he's going to run another flea flicker, but maybe every time they don't fake play action, maybe they do run it more under center that game after this one, and they're trying to sort of set things up for later. But as an individual play call, it's a little bit of a weird one. Let's put it that way.
All right, well, that brings us to the 9th play of the drive. They're across midfield here at the 43.5-yard line. 1st and 10. It is 12 personnel, and Josh, talk us through this one.
Yeah, again, this one is another look here. You've got the motion coming across, and then he's actually going to run back. I can't tell who the receiver is there, but I love the position right as the snap takes place. I mean, it's right there behind Herbert. So we talk about like the different options. You're creating a little bit of unknown or some areas for the defense to put him in a bind. You could get the jet sweep in that sense. Like if it's going to be a handoff, and I think about like, we don't know who the Eagles are going to have here is wide receiver 3 or different personnel, but like if it's a John Ross, if it's a Paris Campbell, whoever it is, you got the speed and the burners. The defense has to account for it. And so I love the timing of this within the motion. Ends up being a little stretch play to Eckler on that side, or on the opposite side, picking up, about 5 yards or so. But again, I think the biggest thing to me is it's not just motion for the sake of motion, because I've seen some people say, oh, just run motion. But it's motion to put the defense in a bind, or to at least have them, hey, you got to account for something else that, you know what, even if you didn't run it there, if you come back later in the game, you run that play, does it work out? Because if you had handed it off, again, it's hindsight being 2020. We're looking at it, after the fact, but you may have an option here to come back later, and instead of going to the running back, you actually hand it off to the receiver coming behind.
Yeah, and that's something, Jonny, that you've spoken about before, that Kellen Moore is definitely not afraid to do, to hand the ball off to receivers, even to tight ends on those sort of end arounds. Anything that sticks out to you here other than, we're throwing that motion in there to threaten the defense vertically or horizontally again?
Yeah, the first thing is that the motion would have, if they'd given this a jet sweep, this is a huge play, by the way. I think I'm going to be really sad now, Shane. I'm going to have to go back and watch the rest of this game because I've got so many thoughts that go around in my head now. But if you look at it from the other angle, they've got this. Like the Bears do not pick it up. They're 3-on-2 on the outside there. And if they actually do hand this off, I don't think that defensive end is getting anywhere near him. I think the linebacker, maybe the linebacker's seen the ball, but that's a tough read for a linebacker to catch up there. This is maybe a controversial statement, and maybe I sound like a right idiot here, and someone who's a lot smarter than me can tell me why I'm so wrong. But despite I'm talking about, I understand the problems of running motion from a passing play perspective. I don't really get why if you're running a play like this, you don't run that motion basically 90% of the time, because it seems like such an obvious win. If you look at it, Shane, sorry, from the second angle as well, if you just watch every linebacker, they just take a step to the left. Like, Kyle Shanahan lives off this stuff. You just make people move pre-snap. If you just watch like 49, 53, they just instinctively like move. And then 53 in particular is so slow to get over. It's that good friend TJ Edwards, isn't it? Because he's just sort of watching what's happening. Like, it's not a big play. It's not a mass gain. It's a standard run play. It doesn't change the world. Most teams do it. I think the big thing for me, once again, is, I'm going to say it's motion. It's also another look. They've got it's 12 personnel. You'll notice they run weak a lot as well. I've said that a lot throughout the video. They seem to like running away from guys rather than running into guys. And that is like some things that coaches like doing. They want space. It could be because they're running with Austin Eckler. They don't really want him sort of charging into guys and breaking tackles. He's more of a runner that wants a little bit of space. There's other reasons why they could do that. But also you've seen a lot of under center. Like, if this is going to be a Kellen Moore offense next year, Jalen Hurts better buckle up and start learning to get used to his back being to the defense, because you can see on this drive it is a lot of an under center run game. Like, we weren't joking when I said that this is going to be the biggest change of the Eagles offense. You can't run this drive. I know that Kellen Moore's offense will change, but you're going to have to get used to going under center. So yeah, I'll be interested to know if they came back at that look later on in the game. But nothing else to add on that particular play.
Yeah, well, join us next week when we break down the rest of this game plan from the Chargers. We've got a comment coming in on YouTube here from Kawan that says, imagine that play with Saquon Barkley, Landon Dickerson, and Jordan Mailata. Absolutely. And yeah, that's just a little bit of an insight into the sickness that us film people have, is that I'm sure Jonny and I are both going to watch the rest of this game later today. So maybe we'll report back next time. But now let's get to the next play here. This is a 2nd and 6. They're in 12 personnel again here at the 39-yard line. And now we're in pistol. So we've been in shotgun, we've been in pistol, or we've been under center. Now we're in pistol, and they've got 3 receivers at the top of the screen. Well, it's a receiver and 2 tight ends at the top of the screen. 1 receiver at the bottom, and they're going to motion the receiver. So now we've got 2 receivers at the bottom, 2 tight ends at the top. And what I love that you get here is we're going to run a play action, and it's out of pistol, and Justin Herbert's going to have to turn his back to the defense, and he starts to roll out. And you're going to get these 2 tight ends are just sort of sealing the edge. So he's got this room to roll out, and he's going to end up throwing it back to the running back. But you see how the defense bites on that, and now you've got your blockers out in front. Running back makes one guy miss, and you're off to the races. And again, I love that so much. Like, even if you're not comfortable being under center, and some quarterbacks aren't, you can be in the pistol. Like, it's still getting the snap like the shotgun, but you can get the benefit of the play fake and the bootleg, and it just sets up this throwback back to the running back. And you get one-on-one in space, a running back making a linebacker miss one-on-one on space, and then it's off to the races. And this is the play that I want to think about Saquon Barkley running. Like, Saquon Barkley is such a better back than Austin Eckler, and to be able to get, if you can get him one-on-one in space, and you've got Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata, or you've got Cam Jurgens out running in front, man, this play is what excites me. And this is the explosive play, and what I think is really cool is this was an explosive play generated by throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and it's all set up with that rollout. And you talked about, Jonny, I think it was first or second play of the drive, when Justin Herbert handed it off and he carried out that little bootleg fake, and it sets this up. And I think that's just a perfect way to cap this drive. So, Jonny, what were your thoughts on that play?
Yeah, I think firstly, the second I saw pistol, I was like, all right, yeah, this is going to be a fun year, because you've had one drive, opening script, you've got under center, you've got everything zone running in this game. Actually, there's no gap scheme at all on this drive, which I think is interesting. But this play was all set up earlier on. So this is the play action running back screen, as you mentioned, but they're faking the outside zone bootleg again and again. You can't do that unless you actually run outside zone. We've also seen two different fakes now. We've seen a flea flip. We've seen a play action earlier on a check down. Then we've seen a flea flicker. This, he looks like he's going to boot and then comes the other way. As you mentioned, you're also using the strengths of your team. The Chargers were not a particular, and this is why when you look at stuff like this, it doesn't mean it will carry over to the Eagles, because every team is different. They don't have an AJ Brown. They are much more of a short, quick game team, despite the fact they got Justin Herbert with Keenan Allen and Eckler. But this is using your players to their strengths. If there's one thing you want Austin Eckler to do, it's to catch the ball out the backfield and to have a linebacker one-on-one. But the whole drive just is so simple. It looked so easy to pick up a few yards, and I know not every drive is going to be like that. But yeah, nothing really else on that play other than it's been set up earlier on. That play was coming based on the work they did earlier on. That would be a hell of a frustrating drive for a defense to open up a game with, because you probably feel like you've seen nothing. You've seen 100 different looks. You haven't really got a feel for what the offense is going to do. Yeah, so that's all I've already got to add on that. Josh, anything else on that particular play? And then maybe we'll go very quickly to some overall thoughts on the drive in general.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. Honestly, the fact that, as a defense, you're not going to be happy going through that because you didn't get much of a read. And honestly, if anything, you got set up for more of them. So I'm curious to know what you guys find out as far as, do they hit on some of the plays that they set up if you watch the remainder of the game. But no, I think that it's right. It's just, it feels efficient. You've got quick hitters. It didn't feel forced or difficult at all. And yes, it's only one drive, but still at the same time, it's like so many times of seeing the Eagles offense and Jalen Hurts, and now we're going to get into that as well. But it's like, it's night and day difference of a lot of times it's just kind of a pitch and catch. Like, all right, there you go. Take what the defense gives you. You don't have to force it. You have different options. You're kind of utilizing or taking advantage of what the defense moves or how they move it whenever you got the motion going on. So overall, no, I think it's a breath of fresh air. Certainly take advantage of the playmakers. And I think that, you talk about like even CeeDee Lamb's mentioned, hey, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith are going to love being in Kellen Moore's offense. If you have a rival player that's going to go ahead and say that about an offensive coordinator, that to me is exciting. But I think that the more that you see different plays like this, yes, Kellen Moore has certain things he likes to do, but he's also not afraid to change things up or do things that take advantage of those playmakers. So should be very exciting to see how he utilizes all the guys, AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley. I mean, I can't even imagine where all that's going to go with, but Smitty and Goddard and all those guys.
Yeah, and if you go back and look at like the box score for this drive, obviously it started badly with that busted RPO, snap issue, whatever. Once they picked up that first down, they never hit a third down again. They have a 2nd and 5, a 2nd and 5, a 2nd and 6. A couple times they just picked up a first down on first down. Like, they weren't generating explosive plays, but they also weren't living on third down conversions. Like, they were routinely ahead of the sticks with 2nd and 5, 2nd and 6. Obviously, except for that one play that busted, and they were still able to get out of that and just stay on schedule. So that's a big thing to me. If you can be methodical, it opens up the explosive plays. And so many times last year, I felt like the Eagles were chasing the explosive plays into bad looks, and they were afraid to be methodical. And so if you can add some methodical drives into that, I think it just makes you a much more balanced offense.
Was that a comment for me, Shane? Or did you do your lovely host where we pause?
I just figured that you've podcasted with me enough now. You should just know you're up, man.
We have a guest now, Shane. It could be 21. Yeah, right. I'll finish this up because we have been going a while, and I do want to get to it's a bit weird. You can talk about the backstory because that's your job. We are doing this as a separate podcast next week, but if you're listening live, we'll just seamlessly transition into it. But we're going to have a look at Jalen Hurts next. Yeah, overall thoughts, as you sort of mentioned, the things that come to my mind immediately was just how multiple the looks were. So not crazy personnel. We didn't see a great deal. That was a very generic drive, like 11 and 12, like 90% of coaches around the league. But everything else was so multiple. Like it was very, very rarely static. You barely ever saw the same look. I'd like to actually just see a snapshot of how they lined up before every play, because I'm pretty sure nearly every single play looked different. You saw under center, you saw lead blockers, you saw pistol, you saw split zone. But it was very quick game and run game heavy. Interestingly, like, not to be negative, but that is very different to what we've seen out of the Eagles the past few years. Like, I don't think the Eagles are going to want to run an offense necessarily like that with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, but I think they can take elements of it. And there's sometimes, we've said before, Shane, the Eagles coaching staff was arrogant. They were like, we're better than you. And sometimes you can win by being basic. And then later on in the games, you can expand up. You can start throwing it around the park to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith later on. It doesn't have to be the only way in which you win. Yeah, we got so many ideas now, Shane. I think we should 100%. We'll talk about it off air, but watch the rest of that game for a pod, because now I'm intrigued. But I'm almost more intrigued now to go back and watch an Eagles first drive from last year, because I'm pretty sure it would just be the polar. But don't worry, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to go through that again. But it would be very, very different. So yeah, that's my final thoughts on the drive as a whole.
All right, so there you have it. Just a look at a drive from Kellen Moore, and again, my criteria picking this drive is I wanted a long scoring drive so we get a big sample size and see something successful. But I didn't go in looking for specific things other than that. So that's just kind of what we came up with. That is their game against the Bears in Week 8. If you want to go rewatch the game or something, it was their opening drive. You can go check that out. We're going to transition now. For those of you watching live, those of you listening will never hear this because I'm going to edit it out. But those of you watching live, we're going to transition now. We're going to look at Jalen Hurts' 5 most improbable completions from 2023. So using the next-gen stat stuff and NFL FastStar, I went in and I dug up all of Jalen Hurts' completions that were greater than, I think it was greater than 70% completion percentage over expectation. And I just filtered it out to the top 5. And so I have it's not on the screen, but I'll call it out. I have the down and distance, the result of the play, and the completion probability per next-gen stats for each one of these. You'll see if you're watching. If you're listening, you can, again, find this on Twitter or YouTube, but you'll see the sideline view, you'll see the tight view, and then you'll see the broadcast replay, because some of these catches are incredible, and you just can't see it live. And so I'll pop the first one up here on the screen. This is Week 3. This is a 3rd and 10 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is Jalen Hurts' completion to Olamide Zaccheaus for a 34-yard touchdown. Per next-gen stats, the completion probability on this play was 24.42%. So you guys will remember this play. If you don't, it'll come right back to you. But Tampa Bay is showing single high. They're actually going to rotate to 2 high kind of at the snap, but it's actually going to be I guess they don't really rotate, but it's going to be a cover 3 zone is what they settle into here. And the Eagles are going to run, let's see, I wrote it down. Yeah, they're going to run sort of a drag route with Goddard, and then they're going to run sort of an angle route, or an angle post and a dig route. No, I'm getting this all wrong. I'm just going to watch
it. It's like it's basically a drive concept, Shane, isn't it? You got the shallow, and then you got the deep dig overnight, and then you got the backside dig. Yes, I tagged it as a drive concept with like a post. Yeah,
it's kind of something like this, and so there's just nothing there, honestly. You could maybe try to get that ball out to Goddard quickly, but it's 3rd and 10. He's not going to get the first down, and so Hurts is going to extend the play, and he finds Olamide Zaccheaus for what's just an incredible completion. And so, if it weren't 3rd and 10, I would say you should take that ball to Goddard, but I think there's something to be said for keeping the play alive there and staying in the pocket. And that's maybe some pocket poise we saw fade from Hurts later in the season. You could make the argument, just take the 5 yards and kick a field goal as well, and I could certainly hear that. But Jonny, what were your thoughts watching this play live, if you remember, and then watching it back here on the replays?
Yeah, do you know sport was such a funny thing, Shane? Like, I must have watched this play about 25 times, and yeah, I loved going back and watching these 5 plays of Hurts, because there was always something new that I sort of learned. There's nothing better than watching film. Like, for all the stuff we do in the off season, that's sort of why we do it. So firstly, just comparing it to the previous last week's podcast, if you're listening to a podcast, where we looked at the drive from Kellen Moore, it's completely different. This is just like such a standard Eagles 3-by-1, AJ Brown isolated, very much like what we see probably 90% of the time. So I think the only thing you'd say is I watched this a few times, Shane. If you go back to the first angle, so very commonly seen around the league now is this backside dig, which Hurts is not a good middle of the field thrower. So if you pause it about now, I think someone like a Matt Stafford, who is probably the best in the game at getting backside, if he eliminates, actually that's not the one I'm on about, Shane, believe it or not, the backside dig, I mean literally up top. So I think he's sort of staring at him here. I don't think he's necessarily part of the progression. So I count, like, the way I'd read this is like you've got your 1-2, you've got your drive, which is your shallow, and then your sort of high-low. And then you've got like a post, which is probably like an alert to AJ Brown, depending on the look pre-snap. That might be one that he's not even in the progression, that it might just be based on what they're running. I think Hurts is like really tempted to throw this backside dig now. I think he's like and ahhing. He's like staring at it. I think it's there. And I think someone like maybe Stafford, who is the best of the best, makes the throw. When I say best of the best, I mean that particular throw. I think Hurts almost gets annoyed at himself for not throwing it and then decides to make a harder throw. But I think, firstly, it shows you that he can be very poised in the pocket. I think it shows you that it's that middle of the field that he's still got to work on. But it also shows you that, like, touch, accuracy, ability to make plays sort of outside of structure, this is sort of within the design of the play, is all there. I think it's an incredibly good throw. Like, I'm not taking anything away from him. I think it's just really interesting that backside dig, middle of the field throw is something we see a lot of the top quarterbacks make. And maybe that's something I'd love to see Hurts to make that throw. But it is a difficult throw, and I can hardly take away from the fact he makes arguably the best throw of the season for a touchdown. Yeah, Josh, anything else there from that particular play except for the ridiculous nature of the throw and catch?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And Shane asking, like, if you remember watching it live. I remember watching it live, and I thought, oh, that's picked. Like, as soon as he threw it, I was like, yeah, that's for sure picked. But I mean, it was right out of the fingertips, right out of the reach of the defender. To your point, I mean, it is. He's sitting there forever. I mean, we're going to go through several of these other plays, but it's night and day different. And granted, I know you could say, oh, there's some cherry picking or whatever, but still, it's like it's night and day difference of like he's in the pocket for forever. I don't know exactly what the count was, but like 4 or 5 seconds, and just waiting and waiting, and it's like, all right, hey, you're to go ahead and try to throw a home run ball. It worked, but as we saw, as the season certainly continued to go further and further along, it's like, well, you can't keep doing that. You can't keep relying on the same thing there. So you need to have some sort of more efficiency, and maybe a quick game or a plan that works better. But yes, I mean, as far as the throw itself, absolutely ridiculous. And also to the point, I remember Shane, whenever we were recording, it was like, yeah, Jalen sometimes exits the pocket a little bit too quickly, or is not really having the options. So he's just going to go take off and run, or kind of break out of the pocket. But he did there. So fortunately, it worked in that sense. But yeah, it's one of those, it's like, you don't want to like live off of that. That's a great play. That's cool. That's awesome. But you'd like to have some other designs and more frequently.
Yeah. Well, speaking of plays that I don't even know what Hurts is supposed to do with it, let's go to week 8 against the Washington Commanders. And this is a 3rd and 7. The Commanders are in a cover 2 man look, and the Eagles decide to run 4 verticals at it. And Jalen Hurts is going to end up throwing this one up to A.J. Brown at the bottom of the screen for a 25-yard touchdown. this is where, sometimes good players just beat bad X's and O's. The completion probability per Next Gen Stats here was 25.5%. But Josh, I'll throw this one to you first. Just talk me through what you're seeing when you watch this one.
Well, it's the same alignment of Hurts in the gun, which I felt like was, 92% of the time. But, to Jalen's credit, A.J. Brown had absolutely dominated Emmanuel Forbes by that point. So maybe the play call was like, hey, everyone just run and you're going to throw it to A.J. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, you got 5-man pressure there. Like we had been talking about, like how are you helping Jalen in this sense? Like it's take the snap, everyone just clear out. Where's he supposed to go? Sure, throw it deep. AJ two-man, double coverage. It works out, but yes, I mean, I think everybody's just infuriated with the end justifies the means sometimes, but great, you got a touchdown, but the more that you rewind it and take a look, is where on earth is there an option for Jalen? Is there, because if you pause it right as he's about to make the throw, it shouldn't work. AJ's phenomenal, and that's why it worked. And Jalen, it's not even the best throw. AJ kind of has to come back and get it, but it's there's no separation. I mean, there's not even half a yard of separation on any receiver, really. It's where do you want him to throw the football? I mean, you would talk about the efficiency. Jalen had a higher than expected efficiency rating throwing the football because there was hardly anyone open, so he was making good throws, replacing it there. But yeah, this is one of those that, unfortunately, we could pick out a lot of different plays that look similar to this, but when you've got 5 in there and he's having to just take a deep shot, say, all right, double coverage to AJ, let's see how it works out. Again, not one that you want to live off of, but a great play, and that's why AJ's an all-pro.
I love Emmanuel Forbes' reaction right here. It's just what
Yes.
just happened? Welcome to the big leagues. So when I watch this play, I mean, you got a comment here that you would think they'd try to work an end breaker. And the problem here is the defenders are inside. We've got inside leverage, and they're trying to sort of break in and I think occupy the safeties. And Kenny Gainwell's supposed to be getting out into the flat as a check down, and he sort of gets caught up in the line with the games. And I think this is the thing, though. Kwan commented and said Jalen could have run it for 15, and I think that's the answer. I think that's mostly the answer. I think for the most part, when the Eagles last season, if you would see a cover 2 man look like that, it's okay, we're going to run downfield and Jalen can scramble. And Jalen didn't scramble as well last year, but I think that is probably the answer here, or is meant to be the answer, is that you've got the linebacker either following the running back, getting out into the flat, or staying home to cover Jalen, and he can't cover both. So I hate this play call personally. So I don't have a lot more to say about it other than I hate it. But I think that was meant to be the solution here. And Hurts was just nope, I'm just going to throw it up to AJ. So Jonny, what were your thoughts looking at this one?
Yeah, I won't get you in trouble, Shane. But I do know that Shane had a certain Eagles coach talk to him about this play in his DMs. So Shane's more powerful than you guys know. And we sort of went back and forth and sort of we confirmed what we thought about this play. It's the classic Jimmy and Joe's, not X's and O's. I think that's the American phrase, isn't it? Make sure I don't screw that one up.
You said it backwards, but it's the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, did I? Well, I mean, there we go. I wrote, Shane, in my notes for this play, I wrote 3 words in capitals. I wrote the Eagles offense. I have a feeling, well, I know for a fact that some of the Eagles coaching staff would have looked at that play and gone, yeah, perfect. We got what we wanted. The team was built to win on individuals without a doubt. It was not built to win around scheme. And it's funny because I listened to the Athletic Football podcast, which had Tice and Robert Mays last year, and they hated the Eagles offense because I think scheme nerds, guys that want to see you win with scheme, just want to see cool stuff. They want to see a team with no talent running crazy stuff every week that's the sequence perfectly and they're beating good defenses. I think the Eagles were a bit infuriating because they were good just by relying on players. I think the problem is when that doesn't work, when you can't just beat the opposing team, when you get injuries and AJ Brown isn't fully fit, there's just nothing else there. That kind of play is fair enough, it works. It reminds me a little bit actually of the old Bengals. They used to talk about the Bengals used to run this a lot as well. A very famous play called 989, basically 2 go routes and a post route from the slot. And Nate Tice used to say it's the play you run when you think you're significantly better than the other team. And they used to just do like Tyler Boyd, slot, post, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, both run outside go routes. And basically, we'll just throw it to the guy who's free because we're better than them. And it's all very good. It works for like a little bit of time. But at the end of the day, the whole idea of scheme is that you can help the players if things like that aren't working. There's nothing against the quarterback. There's nothing against like the receivers. That is just the Eagles' offense to a T. And it's not the only time we've seen plays like that. I won't go into too much detail. I won't get Shane in trouble. But yeah, we've had like pretty much confirmed on record, and I don't just say this stuff, that was like the plan. There wasn't like, that was the idea. That inside slot receiver is meant, or Dallas Goedert is meant to drag away the safety from AJ Brown, and they're just going to take that matchup. And to be completely honest, I don't hate it as much as some of the scheme guys. I think I defended the Eagles offense a little bit last year, and that is an okay strategy as long as you have something else when that strategy doesn't work. And the problem seemed to be that when it didn't work, there was just no backup. But yeah, I'll move on because I could get you in trouble and talk about that play for a lot longer. So we will swiftly move on.
Let's not do that. Never mind. Got a couple comments here we'll go to. Kwan says, I remember Sanchez on one broadcast saying, quote, "This is such an exhausting way to run an offense." You mentioned scheme nerds like hate the Eagles offense because they want to see you do something cool. Like they want to see you do a flea flicker tight end screen for 6 yards on 2nd and 5. Like that's cool. But it is what it is. Jonny, I do have to ask you, a comment from Eagles X's and O's says Jonny is spitting. Do you know what this comment means, Jonny?
I hope it means I'm doing something good because the 100 emoji makes it sound positive. So I would assume it's good. I will just say, Shane, my theory on the Tice and the Maze thing, and I've had this theory for a while. I'm just going to annoy every scheme nerd. A lot of scheme guys are guys that like haven't played football or played at a very basic level and aren't elite athletes like myself. So you end up not wanting the answer to sports just to be throw it to the best athlete because you wish there was a better answer out there that you can one day come up with, but it's too basic. You can't just throw it to AJ Brown. And like sometimes you can. Unfortunately, the guys that were like AJ Brown don't end up being scheme nerds when they get older because they just say, well, just throw it deep to the best receiver. I was like Michael Irvin basically found on NFL every time was just throw it to the best receiver. This stuff's easy because I think he still thought he was every team's wide receiver one. So yeah, I think there's a good comment coming in as well. Brett Coleman called it a high school offense. And again, the funny thing is it was probably still a top 5, top 10 offense overall for the last 2 years. Like it works. But as I said, when it doesn't work, there's nothing else there. Right, let's move on to the third one, Shane, before we go for way too long on 2 throws by Hurts.
Okay, let's do it. So this third one is week 7. It's a 1st and 10. This is going to be a 42-yard completion to A.J. Brown. This is in the Dolphins game. This one pretty much seals the game. The completion probability on this play was 25.94%. Jonny, I'll click play here, and I'll let you talk us through this one first.
Yeah, this is my favorite one. It's straight away just classic Eagles offense. Eagles are either 2x2 or 3x1. There's nothing else. And they're just trying to isolate A.J. Brown like 90% of the time. That's basically what they're trying to do here. They're trying to isolate A.J. Brown. There's the worst blocking attempt / pickup protection by Kenny Gainwell I think it is you'll ever see. Everything goes wrong. Schematically, it's a disaster. There's nothing good about this play, yet it works. It ends the game because it's just an unbelievably good throw, an unbelievably good catch from 2 ridiculously good players. And as I said, that's sometimes what football is. I don't think Hurts gets enough credit. I still don't think he gets enough credit for how good he is of a deep ball thrower. If this is a hell of a throw, like not only has he got pressure running straight at him, he doesn't like lean into this throw at all. I've used to question Hurts' arm strength when he came out as a rookie, and I did question it, and I think I got it wrong. I think this is arm strength. Arm strength isn't just velocity, isn't just like Josh Allen, like just charge everything in 100 miles an hour. Arm strength is also the ability to throw off platform, the ability to get something behind it. This throw is really tough. Like he goes to step into it and he just doesn't get to. And the placement to throw it exactly where he does, and then it's just AJ Brown doing AJ Brown things. This is like my favorite play because it's terrible all around, yet it's brilliant. Because it's just it's just what the Eagles can sometimes do. It's what happens when you've got better players than the other team. Nothing else much to it. Josh, anything else I've missed?
No, you got it. This was a game that I was at in person, so I remember that catch very vividly. They were actually running towards us. We were kind of up in that end zone area, so it's phenomenal. But yes, I mean it's to the point of what Allison said earlier and what we mentioned. But it's like the Eagles running a high school offense. If there's your best player, it works at the lower levels. It's not as frequent, but still, it's how insanely good AJ Brown is. To your point, also with Jalen Hurts there. I don't know of a lot of quarterbacks that see that hit coming and are able to make that type of throw. Kenny G catching strays, rightfully so, especially with that blocking intent. But again, like time and time again, especially on these throws that really should not have been completed based on percentages, it's just I think if it was a lot of other people, you just try to classify it as it's a hope and a prayer. Like you're just literally, there you go. Hey, you're best player. Hopefully it works out. But, good players make plays sometimes, and that's exactly what it was.
And bad blockers miss blocks sometimes.
Bad players, yeah.
Yeah. My biggest thing I wanted to point out on this one isn't even about the Eagles. It's about the Eagles for this year, I guess. And this is Vic Fangio's defense. And this is something, they do something here that you see them do a lot. And that is they're going to drop this top edge rusher out and they're going to blitz a linebacker off the other side. And it's a way to try to overload one side, and it's a way to try to get a free runner because you're screwing up the the offensive protections. And Eagles X's and O's mentioned it. If Van Ginkel didn't delay blitz, if he gets off the snap better, this is a sack. Like, he's pretty slow getting out here. And I don't know if he's reading something. I don't think so from what I know of how Fangio calls his defense. I don't think he's reading anything. I think he's just late. And then Gainwell, totally whiffs the block. But you also just have, again, this is the Eagles offense, right? They spin into single high, and what are we doing? We're running a stop and go. We're running a stop and go. It's pick a side. We're going to throw the ball 50 yards downfield, and you just pick your guy you want. We're really not concerned about anything else underneath. We're going to go try to win this game right here by picking up an explosive play. And again, it works. It's just I don't think that's how you want to always make your living. But that was the most interesting thing to me here is seeing that little tidbit from Fangio. And again, like you mentioned, Jonny, Hurts' arm strength and stepping up into all these, which it's a common thread, him getting hit on these throws, stepping into contact, because that dramatically lowers that completion probability. But his ability to take a hit as he's making a throw, you don't want to see somebody doing that a lot because they're going to get hurt, but you want him to be able to do it in a big moment, 5 minutes left in a key game here. So really great play there by Hurts despite what it is schematically. So, okay. Anybody have anything else on that play before we move on?
No, just if you think that play schematically is bad, wait for the next one.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm ready for the next one. Not to get us too far off on a tangent, but I'm glad you actually brought that up with Van Ginkel, because I'm pretty high on Zach Bond. So the similarities are there. If he's blitzing from that off-ball linebacker spot, that's a good point you bring up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get to this next play. Oh man, I'll just start here. So it's week 12. This is a 3rd and 15. And I'm going to diagram for you the concept the Eagles come up with on 3rd and 15. Okay, so we have a curl route. We got a curl route. We have a curl route. We've got a curl route. And oh, wait, we run a fade. This is the play. I don't know. I had the rant about Sean Desai the week before he got fired last season on this podcast. So what are we even doing? And when I watch this play, I'm just what are we even doing here? But Jalen Hurts is going to buy time, and he's going to find Olamide Zaccheaus for a 29-yard touchdown that has absolutely nothing to do with this play call. They're showing a cover 0 pressure, but it sort of tips the hand here. Number 23 is already opening his hips before the snap, getting depth. So it's not actually going to be cover 3. They're going to bail into a cover 2 zone. And we can watch this play out as they bail off the line. But, where should Hurts go with this ball on time? I don't even know. Top of our drop, back foot, where should he go with this? He's looking at the top of the screen. One of these guys had to have run the wrong route, right? That's the only thing I can come up with because surely this cannot be the play design that he's hitting the top of his drop, and the place he's meant to look first is two guys sitting down with curl routes right next to each other. Like that would never work. That there's no level of football where that should be open. And so, maybe somebody's just running the wrong play here, but Hurts gets out of the pocket. I also think the scramble drill reactions are pretty bad from the receivers here. Like, Hurts is out of the pocket right now. To me, like, Gainwell should be going deep. Maybe we're breaking to the sideline. I don't know, but I just don't think the reactions here are very good from the players. They just sort of cluster up and stay near their defenders. And finally, Olamide Zaccheaus breaks deep and gives him somewhere to go. It's a tremendous throw. It's a terrible play. Jonny, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you actually don't give the Eagles enough credit, Shane. You said they don't have a plan. This is the plan. The plan is...
If it was A.J. Brown, I would believe you. But that's Olamide Zaccheaus.
The plan is from empty. The plan is from empty. Jalen Hurts stands there, runs around, and the Eagles score touchdowns. That's how football works, Shane. I mean, we joke, but that is the plan. The plan is there is no plan because the second... You can tell this is by design. This is literally read one side to the right very quickly. And by the way, he has to go to the short side. He can't look at the deep route because he's expecting pressure because they've lined up with 6. So he's instantly going to his check down side, basically, which he has to do because if you look pre-snap, they are expecting pressure here. How many times do we see teams just blitz 6 versus 5? Have you noticed on none of these plays, by the way, any motion, any shifting, it's either empty, it's 3x1, 2x2, done. That's it. Like pre-snap, they do not move. They could easily send 6 here, like without a doubt send 6. And by the way, they're on the 30-yard line. So Hurts cannot take a sack here because field goal range, it is a nightmare. So he basically has to look right because he has to instantly get this ball out. But the second it doesn't work, that's it. There's no scheme. There's no play, but the Eagles are fine with this. This was the plan. The plan is Hurts, get out of the pocket and make something happen. And the only good news is that they watched this play and decided that Quez Watkins was better than Zaccheaus all year. So that makes you feel even better as well. Because you didn't even get to see Zaccheaus do anything else like this. Yeah, this is a nothing play. Like this is just pure backyard football. There's nothing to this. It's a ridiculous play by Hurts, basically, and a really, really good catch. But this is like the definition of backyard football. There is nothing schematic here at all. This is just a very good quarterback making a sort of ridiculous fluky play and a receiver making a really, really, really good catch. And if you look at the score, 21-24, 11 minutes left. It's like a field goal would have been okay here, but you sort of did need to score as well. So it's also a risky play. I don't know, Josh, anything else to say? I mean, there's not really much else except for the fact it's just good players, isn't it?
It's just really good playing, and it's kind of the consensus for the season, but also this game. All of us know how it turned out with Elliott even making the ridiculous field goal to begin with, and Jalen and his scoring touchdown to seal the deal. It's hero ball. It reminds me, honestly, a lot of times, like the more that I go back and watch some of these plays, I'm like, it's literally Madden in real life. Like it's just take the snap, everyone go run, and you're going to just run around with Jalen for a little while. And there you go. There's an opening. You're just going to go throw it to someone. Cause there's not, I was going to say there's not a plan, but to your point, Jonny, that is the plan. The plan is, hey, Jalen, you just go make something happen and we're going to make it work. And to that point, even in this game, it had worked, right? Like at this point in the season, it had worked. Now, obviously, you advance a little further in the season, and then that no longer continues to be the case. But you know what? Hey, they hadn't had to pay for it. Even if you'd say, well, okay, it's not great. If the coaches themselves had taken a look at, they go, yeah, maybe we need to change some things up here. That it was fine. It was so far the end justifies the means. So they're like, well, it can't be too bad. We got these playmakers. We're just going to keep drawing it up this way. But yeah, I'm totally at a loss. Same deal. You have the curl routes on the same side. It makes life unbelievably easy for the defense. It can't and will not work consistently. I'm honestly shocked that the percentage was even that high for the completion probability, because looking and watching that play again, it's phenomenal. It's an incredible throw, incredible catch. But yeah, it's just, you don't want to live off that.
Yeah, I mean, if they sent all 6, where is the in-breaking route against the off coverage to get the ball out of his hands quick? Like, you're still trying to run a 10-yard curl route against a free runner. It's just terrible plan. I hate it, but at the same time, I do kind of like yelling about it every once in a while. So maybe we get a few plays that I can get angry about on podcasts next year. But And to your point about Olamide Zaccheaus had 10 catches last year, and 2 of them are in Jalen Hurts' top 4 throws of the year. Like, that's insane. But I digress. Let's go on to the last play here. This is week 11. This is a 1st and 10 against the Kansas City Chiefs. Jalen Hurts is going to find Devontae Smith for a 41-yard completion. The completion probability here was 27.71%. Josh, I'll throw it to you here first. Talk us through what you see on this one.
Well, again, unsurprisingly, Jalen is in the gun. You've got a blitz coming, and I mean, once again, it's you're going to throw it up to Smitty, who's got the. I mean, it's kind of pick your choice here of who you're going to be going to at the isolation on Smitty, but he's going route on, I guess, the fade on that right side. But I mean, it's instead of, and it's even more polarizing, honestly, seeing the differences of like Kellen Moore and then taking a look at this. So the fact that they're like side by side, basically, there's one way to do it efficiently and one way, because I think, Jonny, you described it as it was just very like nothing crazy, nothing out of the norm whenever we were looking at Kellen Moore's offense, and especially that opening drive for the Chargers. It's drastically different. I know these are, the most improbable completions here, but it's the MO for the entire season. And especially when Jalen's taking it back, it's like, where do you want him to go for the football? All right, there you go. Throw it deep to Smitty. It works out because Smitty's he's a great receiver. He can make that catch. It's a little bit underthrown, but he's able to actually, keep up with it. But even in this game here, it was, I remember thinking to myself, I was like, this offense should not, it can't keep working like this. And we found out that it didn't, but it's like another one of these throws, another one of these positions where you could, it seems like, take a much more advantage of what the defense is giving you there. And, but their blitz beater, let's be honest, was most of the time, hey, you're going to blitz. All right, we're going to go ahead and throw it deep. Like, let's just see what we can do for it. So that's their plan. Deep shot to beat the blitz.
Yeah. Eagles Eric chimed in here and said that Devontae Smith loses 0 speed when tracking the ball, and he is such a good deep ball tracker. Jonny, what stands out to you on this one?
Firstly, just Hurts, like really good quarterback play. The way he looks to the left and then moves the safety with his eyes and then comes back across, the sort of stuff that some people online, idiots mainly, act like Hurts can't do. I don't actually think this is getting through progressions. This is when people say, look at the quarterback, he's getting through his progressions. I'm not sure he is. I think he knows exactly where he's going pre-snap with this ball. I think he's looking left just literally to essentially move the deep safety. He knows he's going to Smith. Again, nothing too simplistic, nothing too complicated, pretty basic. The Eagles do a really nice job picking up the blitz. And I think, although it's slightly underthrown, it just sort of highlights that the Eagles have another extremely good weapon, as well as AJ Brown. And that's why the Eagles sort of run their offense the way they do. I don't want to come across as too negative in that the Eagles offense has had some really good success running it like this. It's just at the end, it sort of ran out of magic. And also, I think Devontae Smith is an awesome slot fade route runner. I think he's done that almost since he came into the league. I just wish this was a touchdown. I think Jalen Hurts knew if he slightly underthrew it, he could get the tush push and get that 1-yard touchdown after to bump his fantasy points up. I bet he carried on. But yeah, Eric chimed in as well. I love people online who make football sound like too easy. Like, look at his eyes. He's reading his progressions. I'm like, no, that's pure pre-snap work. And that's still really good. But he knows exactly where he's going with the football. And he moves the safety perfectly. I think just like sort of bigger picture before we finish up on those plays, like I liked doing this because it reminded me that Hurts is really good. And some of the criticism last year can go way over the top. And there's clearly a very talented player here. And it's also mental. For those of you that have stayed with us for an hour and 20, and I think Shane said there's quite a few people with us, which is pretty insane. When you watch the Kellen Moore drive and then you look at I know it's Jalen Hurts' most improbable throw, so it's sort of like the point, but it is just so different. And the more I watch these two offenses, I am absolutely fascinated to see how Sirianni and Moore blend it together, because my word, they are like polar opposites. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to see if Moore just completely gets the reins and totally does his own thing, or whether it's, I always hear this word like strike balance. I'm like, hey, that's easier said than done. What do you do? Run 2 really nice schematic plays and then run 4 verticals just to keep Sirianni happy. Like the striker balance is easier said than done. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It did just remind me that Hurts, as I said, is a really good quarterback, and it's nice to see. And I think some of the criticism last year, in particular of him, went way over the top. And I know it's only a highlight reel, but you can see the traits in those plays that you want to see from a top quarterback. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much where I'm at, Shane.
It reminds me, your comment about striking a balance makes me think of like back when I used to play a lot of Madden online, and everybody always ran like, everything was in shotgun, inside zone, dagger, 4 verticals. And so I would like run that same offense everybody else did like the first half of a game. But my actual offense was all like an under center thing, and I would save it for the second half. So by halftime, they're like figuring out your offense, and then I just ran a different one. Maybe the Eagles will just have 2 offenses, and you'll never know which one they're going to run week to week. But yeah, it's night and day difference. I'm excited to see what Kellen Moore is able to bring in. And we're going to know right away if it's lip service or if it's true that this is Kellen Moore's offense. Because if you don't see under center, if you don't see some motion, if you don't see more of an outside zone focus, it's just Sirianni's offense with a different play caller. And so we'll see. I'm anxious to see it, but until we get to August, September, we're just going to have to keep living through Chargers tape and Jalen Hurts 2023 tape. So that's about all I got. Josh, any final thoughts that you want to throw out there for people?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me on for one. But also, yeah, like I'm with you. I can't wait till the football season gets here and like the real, so like in September, but on a promising or like an optimistic note, at least the rumors are there's some more motion based off of OTAs. I know it's just OTAs, so it's we actually see it. But it sounds like we're trending in the right direction. I'm super excited to see, because the more you look at the numbers that AJ Brown, Devontae Smith have put up, and they're not really being utilized in the best way. Like they're being put in spots that, hey, just go beat somebody instead of scheming them open. I'm just curious to see, like, if Smitty, even 10% emotion compared to 3, right? Like, or let's move him into the slot a little bit more often. I know AJ Brown's been rumored to get some reps in the slot. Not that they didn't have some, but like, how much more will they be utilized on that? So I'm right there with you. I'm extremely excited once we do see it. I hope that it is like we're hearing, that Kellen Moore is taking control of the offense. It's going to be a lot of his. And then honestly, that's the question, is how much easier does it make the life, not only on Jalen, but, kind of between both of them, but Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. And then, oh, by the way, let's not forget Saquon Barkley, who's just a game changer as well. So I'm super excited. The worst case, or the worst thing about this is just the fact that we have so long to wait. So I'm impatient by this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Jonny, any final thoughts from you here before we get out of here?
Two very, very quick ones, then we will finish up. Firstly, thank you massively, Josh. I was going to say make sure you plug your stuff, but I imagine most people who are watching us subscribe to Josh. If they don't, you are mad. The Philly Special Show, you've got it in your comment. It does say here, Josh, on YouTube, you have 23 million views plus, which is pretty insane. So YouTube is so hard to crack, and your videos are incredibly well produced and obviously well researched. So absolute pleasure. If we could steal a few of those views, that'd be lovely. 23 million views sounds mental when you see it like that, doesn't it? The world is a strange place. And secondly, we did have one comment which me and Shane got last week from somebody who rightly pointed out we haven't had as much film of late. Obviously, it's the off season, so we do have less, especially when it comes to draft season. So we tried something out there a bit different. So please let us know in comments. Please tweet us. You know the drill. This podcast is basically what you want it to be, as long as it's film related. So if you do want us to get to the rest of that Chargers game, now I've said it out loud. If you're interested, you know the drill. Comment on the video, comment on YouTube, or just tweet both of us. We do read pretty much every comment. And obviously, if you leave them on iTunes as well with a 5-star review, we will definitely see it. Right. I enjoyed this, Shane. I'll leave it to you to do the formal ending as the host.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys be sure you're following Josh. Follow him on Twitter. Follow him on YouTube. He's on Twitter at the PHL Special. He's on YouTube at the Philly Special Show. Go check out his stuff. Show him some love. There's over 1,000 of you guys watching live, which is just incredible for the middle of a work day in July. So we really appreciate you guys. If you're watching and you have not subscribed to the Eagles Pin Pull Network, wherever you get your podcast, please go and do that. It's not just mine and Johnny's show, but there's other shows on there. We're building towards a show a day by the time we get to the NFL season, trying to fill some of the void left by BGN Radio. So please go check that out. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Spotify, 5-star ratings are really appreciated. On Apple Podcasts, we really appreciate 5-star ratings and reviews. We're coming up on a month since the last review. So if you haven't left a review, do us a favor, go leave us a good review. That would really help us out. So That's going to about do it for this episode. I will tease that next week, I think we've got another really cool guest in the works, a big name that you guys will know, and I think we'll really enjoy hearing our conversation with them. But I'll leave it there for now. We will catch you guys next week on another episode of On the Shane Page.